Speaking of percentages, I'm going to guess that 100% of people have at least heard of Psycho.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this movie is one that needs very little introduction, but we're going to give one anyway. Last week we had watched Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, and we decided to give this one a go. His I don't know if it was his immediate previous movie, but it is the one of his horror movies that he's really the best known for.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this was 3 years before The Birds.
Right. Although funny enough, I didn't realize that the cover for Psycho would also have a whole bunch of birds on it.
Yeah, yeah. That's because Norman's a bit
Oh,
of a
that's right.
taxidermist. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
he likes stuffing birds, and he had
Uh,
a bunch of yeah.
all right. So if for some reason, actually, you know what? There's actually a very decent chance that people in the audience basically know the broad strokes of what Psycho is without ever having actually seen it. Um,
Yeah.
you showed me a clip from Rocco's Modern Life earlier today. So many Simpsons references to various scenes in Psycho.
Yes, South Park has even referenced it more than once. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
just and like so many comedy shows with it he in a
yeah.
dark scene like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where actually watching it is almost it feels very familiar right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Um, now I had seen this once in a high school English class. It was that stage of the year where it's like, okay, well, we're about to go on break, so if we're going to watch a movie, let's watch something with some cultural relevance.
yeah. Yeah, and I had actually never seen it before, at least not all the way through. I'd only seen like clips from it out of context, including the shower scene.
Yep. Um, s- so right away, watching this back to back with the birds. So did you see Hitchcock doing his traditional cameo in this one? I must have missed it.
He's it's when Janet Leigh when she goes back to work, he's
Mm,
outside the window.
okay.
Yeah,
See, I missed it this time. But he waited a little bit longer than the very first scene this go around, unlike in the birds.
yeah, the birds where he's just like yeah, first scene of the movie, he's walking right out with a pair of dogs.
Yep. Yep. Um, so much like the birds, this one stars a blonde woman with shortish hair and a somewhat curvy figure. It's like, okay, Hitchcock, I salute your type, I guess, but
Yeah,
it's kind of funny how predictable he was
yeah,
with his casting.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so if with the birds where I said that the movie starts 40 or the horror starts 45 minutes in really, this one is kind of similar where it doesn't necessarily have what I think of as the feel of a horror movie early on. It feels more like a romantic drama already in progress.
yeah, yeah, and with a little bit of what do we call it, getaway movie, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so the movie starts off where we meet not Janet, yeah, Janet Lee, sorry. Um, Janet Lee playing Marion Crane, and she's in a hotel room with her boyfriend Sam Loomis. You pointed this out when you watched it. Very risque scene for 1960.
Right, they were talking about how he had gotten divorced, how his wife was draining him for alimony,
Yeah,
how he couldn't go away with her even though she desperately wanted to, how this oh, we can't go back to my place because my mother's photo is there, my sister lives there. Well, send your sister out for the night and turn your mother's photo around.
yeah, yeah, and so so then she goes back to work, and her boss, who's like a realtor, land developer guy, um, has a new client who's just bought a house for his daughter. It was a wedding present, and hands over $40,000 in cash, which back then, I actually did an inflation calculation, was in today's money is over $400,000.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
But so what I'll say about this movie that's really good is that, for at least in the opening half, it is very willing to let you draw inferences.
Hmm.
There's never a scene where she thinks to herself, I need to steal that money so that I can get away from all of this trouble I have. You just
Yeah.
have a scene of her looking very carefully at the money, and then you smash cut to her packing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty easy to figure out, like, okay, yeah, she's running away with the money.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so, but of course, on her way out of, she's in Phoenix, and on her way out of town, though, she does see her boss walking across the street, and they make eye contact, and he's like, "Yeah, I know what you did." Yeah, and so then she's trying to get to California to meet up with Sam. But a lot of stuff happens along the way, like a policeman's following her, and so she has to get a new car.
right. She
Uh,
keeps acting guilty in ways like that really are going to draw more attention than anything else.
yeah, yeah, and then she gets she's driving along at night, and then it starts raining, and then she somehow ends up off the main highway, and then ends up at the Bates Motel.
Yes. So she runs into Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins, and the dude was basically made for the role of this neurotic weirdo
Yeah,
who seems like he means well.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, he seems very, like, just kind of like closed off, very, slightly awkward, but just trying to be as friendly as possible. But then as he starts interacting with Janet Lee more, you begin to realize that, okay, yeah, this guy's off his rocker.
Yeah. Whew.
Mhm.
And you very quickly realize that he has actually, what really strikes me is that he is basically what some people would, some awkward people you run into online would be if they didn't have the internet to blow off steam
Yeah,
or
yeah,
radicalize them one way or the other.
that's true. Yeah.
In another world, he could have been talking about how Bernie could still be president, guys.
Yeah.
Or a QAnoner. But
Yeah. Yeah. Listen in to Alex Jones.
yes, exactly. Well, whichever side you want to make fun of.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, he has a very interesting relationship with his mother. One thing that seemed a little bit weird to me is that she could hear them perfectly from the main house or the main hotel when they were
Yeah.
shouting up at their living house through the pouring rain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's nitpickery.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. So then we kind of cut to, the infamous shower scene where, because it's and again, I'm not going to worry about spoilers. It's Norman dressed up like his mother, and he stabs her to death. Um, and Probably the only reason this movie was done in black and white was because of the blood. They used chocolate syrup for the blood, and it wouldn't have looked like wouldn't have looked right if it was in color.
right, it was an intentional design choice because the black and white just like it highlights lights and darks.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way that again 1960 it was an odd choice for a movie, but it wasn't necessarily the worst choice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I would give another example of that would be the man who shot Liberty Valance, which I think came out just a couple of years before this movie. And that movie was in black and white because the characters that John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart play in that movie are supposed to be in their mid 20s.
Oh.
And John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart were not in their mid 20s when they made that movie.
Oh, 1962.
Oh, okay, so it was after. All right.
Yeah, so even a more interesting choice.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, then the movie then the movie pivots the point of view to the sister, who's played by Vera Miles, I believe was the actress's name.
Yep.
Yeah. And she meets up with Sam, and they're trying to figure out what happened to Janet Leigh, and then that's when they come across the base motel, and you know lots of more bodies start piling up, and that's when we find out just how deranged Norman really is.
Yes, he has so basically what happened was his mother had kept him under her thumb for his whole life, and I guess he felt isolated and alone, like he could never leave her. And then she started a relationship with a man, and Norman snapped, killed her, taxidermied her body, and then like she developed in his head as a personality
Yes.
because
Yeah.
like he couldn't imagine life without her, so he invented her reactions.
Yeah, and there's a scene at the end of the movie where we have this psychiatrist character who uh, basically gives a bunch of expository dialogue about explaining his psychosis and explaining how he has this split personality between him and his mother, and that the reason, like, because you find out that there were other young ladies that he had killed, and it's because whenever he develops an attraction for another woman, that's when the mother side of his persona kicks in, and then he kills them, and because he feels this guilt, and but then by the end of the movie, though, the his mother persona has completely taken him over.
Yeah, now the scene of that exposition, watching it the second time, it was much more obvious than the first time it was tacked on because the studios made Hitchcock include that because they're worried that the dumb audience wouldn't be able to understand what had happened.
Yeah. And Hitchcock's like, well, isn't it obvious what's going on?
Right, especially with the end scene with like the I wouldn't even hurt a fly
Yeah,
scene,
yeah.
where it's Norman thinking in his mother's voice.
Yes.
In that scene, like you could tell that it was made in protest. Like it was in a small, cheap set. It was the dialogue wasn't interesting. It was just like now, mind you, it was a fine enough performance from the psychologist character himself,
Yeah.
but uh, it was like, man, you could tell, you could kind of tell this was under protest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's just like, okay, fine, I'll put it in here, but I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to do it very well.
If it's not worth doing, it's not worth doing right.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so strengths and weaknesses. So this one has an iconic soundtrack.
Mhm.
Um, one thing that actually kind of surprised me, so it's not just the dee 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 during the shower scene, but there's another theme that they start the movie with that sets the mood very well.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of kept surprising me was how often it was being used in scenes that were like tense, but didn't feel like the type of tense that the song was promising,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
her driving along.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was kind of meant to be like, oh, it's give that sense of, well, it doesn't seem like there's something bad happening, but something bad is going to happen, and you need to be ready for it.
Right.
Uh,
I just would like I think they maybe could have done a different theme for some of those driving scenes, and it might
yeah,
have and that could have fit the like it felt like it was at a 9 when it needed to be at like a 5 for that stage of the movie.
yeah, okay,
That
yeah,
was just a personal thought as I was watching it again.
yeah, yeah. The score was done by Bernard Herrmann, who he'd done other. He worked with Hitchcock before in other movies. He also did Citizen Kane,
Hmm.
and he. From what I've heard, at least from according to William Friedkin, he was not a nice man.
Mm.
Um, yeah, because Friedkin wanted to hire him to do the score for The Exorcist, and when he met with him, he was just a total jerk. Like, it just like, oh, okay,
Cost him that job.
yeah, yeah. And the opening score, the one that you mentioned, was actually kind of like loosely parodied in as the opening score for Reanimator. Like that,
Ha.
yeah. Like if you listen to the two songs right next to each other, they sound almost identical.
Okay, that's funny. Um, now, watching it a second time, it is kind of funny how many like oblique references to the split personality there are in Norman Bates's dialogue.
Yeah,
Like I can't recall the specific wordings, but it's like okay, yeah,
yeah.
this is just
Well, like the tagline on the poster: a best friend is his mother."
yep.
Yeah.
Well, I just mean like him saying like I don't know like this isn't an actual bit of dialogue, but it's something along the lines of I have half a mind to something something something.
Oh yeah,
Where it's like I feel like I'm of two minds with this one. Right? Like, yeah, again, I can't remember the exact line, but it was some sort of oblique reference like that.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh, mother's difficult, like oblique references to the fact that his mother is dead, just things like that.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
watching it a second time many years later, it's like, okay, I can see where you were going with this now.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is definitely one of those movies that on repeat viewing, you do catch things that you missed the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, Daniel, I have some thoughts on the pacing of the movie. How did it hold your attention?
I held my attention. Yeah. Uh,
What
Yeah,
else?
no, I didn't get like bored with it or anything like that.
I personally think that it could have been tightened up slightly.
Mm,
Um, but I also would not be sure what to recommend tightening up. Um,
yeah.
so me coming in, having seen it before, knowing the ending, it did kind of feel like a joke where I already knew the punchline at
Mm,
times. So that kind of made me go, okay.
yeah.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
it's like watching The Sixth Sense, after, knowing that Bruce Willis is dead the whole time. Yeah.
yep, exactly. Oh, did Daniel, that 20-year-old spoilers that were relentlessly mocked in pop culture ever since. Come on, man.
Oh, darn, darn. Yeah, I know. I know.
Um, So I don't think I liked watching this one quite as much as watching the birds, and I feel like the birds would hold up better for me on a second viewing, just because. And this isn't like okay, losing your POV character partway through, it kind of felt like we went from okay, we're on the journey with this character, we know what's going on, and oh, now we have this the sister who we've never seen before. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of understand that. Although I will say, like, you talk about something that's been copied a lot is that storytelling method of watching a movie where you think you're watching it with the main character,
Yep.
and then they die and you're like, what the heck? And then you're with another different character. Yeah,
Right. It's just that usually with that type of thing, I shouldn't say usually. You'll often have had like more scenes with the new character. So,
yeah,
like
yeah,
again,
yeah.
it was
It
shocking. It was horrific.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that was Hitchcock was a master of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, if I compare it to The Birds, which we watched last week, that had a consistent cast of characters throughout, and I felt like they also we talked earlier about which Hitchcock's type, attractive blondes with shortish hair. What was Hitchcock's mother like? I wonder if Hitchcock thought his own mother was slightly overbearing and controlling, because it seems to keep coming up.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know enough about his early life to comment on it, but yeah, that could be the case. Yeah.
It just seems plausible given that it keeps being a motif in his stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, see, it sounds like you preferred the birds over this one.
Yep.
I, I probably like this one better.
And I can, I can totally see that.
Yeah.
That's uh, so what did you like about it? Well, outside of
Um.
what you've already talked about, I mean, but
Well.
like what
Well.
pushes it over the edge for you?
Well. I honestly, I think it's Norman. Just the character himself. He's just it's a very he's a very he's a complex, but I mean he's one of those characters that's just like you have this morbid fascination with him. Like you can kind of see like how he could become what he became, and
Hmm.
just the like having having the overbearing mother, and then then just one day snapping, and then and then having that that guilt of like, oh, this was like the one person in the world that that I loved, and that loved me, and now I got rid of her, and then just he just
Cuckoo,
yeah,
cuckoo,
cuckoo,
cuckoo.
yeah,
Um, yeah. The other thing I'll say about it is that I mean, I already praised Anthony Perkins a minute ago, but
yeah,
like like even knowing that he was the one who did it, the way he was able to give his character a lot of like horrified, um, not terror, like just the sense of dread at what he thought his mother had done.
yeah, yeah,
Like he still felt like he was just guilty about what had happened.
yeah,
Uh, but like guilty as if somebody else had done it. And now, oh, I have to cover up for mother again.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and of course the fact that the money that Janet Leigh stole, she wrapped up in a newspaper,
Yep.
and he had no idea that that money was there, and he still took it, and he just tossed it away with her and
Threw it in the bog.
threw it in the bog. Yeah, and I and obviously he, he didn't think twice to look in it, and money obviously didn't mean anything to him.
Yep. Uh, Also, you can kind of see why. Now I think you've told the story before where Anthony Perkins' career was kind of destroyed by this movie because nobody could see him as anything but Norman Bates after this,
Yeah, yeah, and that's partially I think that's probably the big reason why they did the sequels.
right? Because you can see why somebody would want to come back to see that character, but I can't imagine that character being good a second time.
Yeah, although I've heard good things about uh Psycho 2 and 3.
Hmm.
Um and especially Psycho 2. So,
Uh,
I mean, you know,
the other thing that's
I,
kind of interesting is that I feel like in the 60s and 70s, you were much more punished for being associated with a major character,
mm,
like see Adam West as Batman,
yeah, or William Shatner as Kirk, or Leonard
or
Nimoy as Spock. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So who knows? Maybe if he came out with this today, he would have been able to parlay that into more varied roles afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, or at the very least gotten on a Netflix show or something.
Yep, yep. But yeah, no, like so this one it's a classic for a reason. Definitely worth your time. Um, if you somehow didn't know the punchline of this movie, Man, you need to watch more Simpsons, I guess,
Yeah.
because they loved to always like play around with this with Principal Skinner and his mother.
Oh, yeah. What? No, mother, I can't do that.
Mother, it's the middle of the school day.
Yeah. Uh,
But it's a recommend. Like I said, I didn't like it quite as much the second time around as the first, but that's just a matter of taste.
yes. Yeah. And it's on Netflix right now.
So statistically, if you're at all interested in movies, you probably have a Netflix subscription. So why not?
Indeed. Yes. Well, I think we've said all we need to say for tonight.